Criminal charges against 7 policemen over their alleged beating of an Occupy protester. The activist at the center of the alleged beating arrested on suspicion of assaulting police officers. And the U.S. calls on China to release a human rights lawyer.
Good evening. Charges have been filed against 7 police officers in connection with the beating of activist Ken Zhang during the Occupy protests last year. They will appear in court on Monday. Meanwhile, Zhang was arrested today on suspicion of assaulting police officers and resisting arrest. Rani Samtani tells us more.
It's been 1 full year since the alleged beating happened at Tamar Park and shocked the city. 7 police officers who allegedly beat up Civic Party member Ken Zhang reported to the police headquarters this morning. They've been released on bail and will appear at Eastern Magistracy next Monday. The police force announced that 1 chief inspector, 1 senior inspector, and 5 junior police officers have been charged. They each face 1 count of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. 1 officer is additionally charged with common assault. On October 15th last year, police officers were caught on camera beating up Zhang at Tamar Park during the Occupy protests. The charges filed against the 7 officers today carry a maximum penalty of life behind bars. However, it is believed that the prosecution will ask for the case to be transferred to the district court, which can only hand down a maximum sentence of 7 years in prison. In an interesting turn of events, Zhang was arrested this afternoon. He received a call from the police shortly after 8 this morning and was meant to go to the police station at noon. He said he tried multiple times to contact the police to reschedule as he needed more time to consult his lawyers. At around 4 p.m., he went to Central Police Station with his legal representatives to face arrest. Ken Zhang questioned the timing of his arrest, seeing as the 7 police officers accused of beating him up on this very day last year were also charged today.
In my opinion, definitely is a political decision. I just think that they try to dilute or make the public not clear the focus, which is much more important. That some policemen has been arrested because they're beaten up a demonstrator.
The fact that he is going to be appearing in court not tomorrow, but in the afternoon of Monday at exactly the same time as these police officers. The police focus seems to be on protecting the image of the police force rather than seeing that justice is done.
Zhang was arrested on October 15th last year on Lunghua Road for obstructing police, unlawful assembly, and not carrying an identification document. He was later released unconditionally. Police are now charging Zhang with 1 count of assaulting police officers and 4 counts of resisting arrest. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
The Secretary for Justice has rejected accusations of political persecution. He said the prosecution had to consider the interconnections between the case against Zhang and the one against police officers.
It was after having taken advice from Queen's Counsel and after our Director of Public Prosecutions have a chance to very carefully consider the situation that we believe the 2 cases should be handled in the fairest possible way, and that's why we make arrangement for Mr. Zhang and also the 7 police officers to be charged on the same day, and this is today, and that they will be arranged to appear before the court for the first time also on the same day.
The election of chairman and vice chairman of legislative council bodies continued today. As promised earlier, the pro-establishment camp reserved 2 chairmanships and 3 vice chairmanships for the Pan-Democrats. Evelina Lung reports.
Lawmakers today elected the chairman and vice chairman of the 18 legislative panels. As the pro-establishment lawmakers promised earlier, 5 chairman and vice chairman positions were left for the Pan-Democrats. Peter Jung took the chairmanship of the panel on welfare services, while Joseph Lee will continue to chair the panel of health services. As for the vice chairman positions, the Civic Party's Kenneth Chan became the vice chairman of the Panel on Environmental Affairs. Dennis Kwok and Ip Kit Yoon took the vice chairmanships of the Panel on Administration of Justice and Legal Services and the Panel on Education, respectively. The Labour Party's Lee Chot-yang cried foul, accusing the pro-establishment camp of domineering the council and refusing to communicate with the Pan Democrats. However, Tam Yu-jung of the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong denied the accusation. He said all the chairmanships were chosen by the legislators. Evelyn Lang, TVB News.
Now, the nomination period for district council elections ended late this afternoon. Up until yesterday, the Electoral Affairs Commission had received 895 applications. Latest figures show in 90 of the 431 election constituencies, only one candidate was nominated. This means if no one else has applied since then, these candidates will automatically become a district councillor. More than half of them are from the pro-establishment parties.
The United States is calling on China to release a human rights lawyer who was detained in August. The appeal by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry comes as the State Department releases an annual human rights report that is usually heavily critical of China. James Aiken reports.
John Kerry made the call for the release of human rights lawyer Zheng Kai as the State Department released its annual International Religious Freedom Report. The paper is typically critical of Chinese restrictions on Christians, Muslim Uyghurs, and Tibetan Buddhists. Zhang, who is a Christian, was detained the day before a meeting in China back in August with the U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom. His whereabouts are unknown.
The message at the heart of this report is that countries benefit when their citizens fully enjoy the rights to which they are entitled. And this is not a hopeful theory. This is a proven reality. No nation can fulfill its potential if its people are denied the right to practice, to hold, to modify, to openly profess their innermost beliefs.
In response, China's foreign ministry today criticized the report for being reckless.
美方无视客观事实
The ministry said the report is biased because it doesn't reflect truth or reality, and that China has always protected religious freedom. The report also condemns governments that use the guise of fighting terrorism to persistently crack down on religious liberty.
As much as we oppose the actions of terrorists, we do not agree with governments that use those crimes as a pretext for prohibiting religious activities that are, in fact, nonviolent and legitimate. Those who misuse the terms terrorist and extremist are not fooling anybody.
Separately, Chinese state media reported today that the 16-year-old son of detained human rights lawyer Wang Yu has been returned to house arrest at his grandmother's home in Inner Mongolia. The report says police busted an illegal immigration ring that was trying to coerce the boy to escape through Myanmar. A network of activists say they had tried to help the boy escape to the U.S., where he had hoped to study. James Aiken, TVB News.
Myanmar's government and 8 ethnic rebel armies signed a ceasefire agreement today, ending more than 6 decades of fighting. The pact was signed at a ceremony by President Thein Sein and representatives of the groups. However, other more powerful rebel armies refused to come on board, signaling that peace will remain elusive for some time to come. Still, the agreement is seen as a first step towards ending long-standing insurgencies against the government by various minority groups. They've been demanding autonomy and control over their natural resources. Though largely in agreement to keep talking, the pact could pave the way for a more comprehensive political settlement in the future.
Thousands of Iranian troops are being deployed in northern and central Syria in a dramatic escalation of Tehran's involvement in the Syrian civil war. They join Hezbollah fighters amid Russian airstrikes in an ambitious offensive to wrest key areas away from rebels. Alan Buchnia reports.
It's a multi-pronged war in northern and central Syria, with government troops, the Islamic State militant group, and rebel fighters all battling against each other. Rebel troops continue to fight in Hama and Latakia, which government troops retook earlier this week. The arrival of Iranian troops suggests the Syrian government of President Bashar al-Assad is preparing for an offensive to take back vast areas of the north that have been captured by rebels, many of them U.S.-backed, and Islamic State forces. The retaking of the strategic northern town of Aleppo appears imminent. Rebel troops claimed yesterday they recaptured the town of Tel Jabin, just north of Aleppo, which had been taken by Islamic State. Russian airstrikes, which began just over 2 weeks ago, are aiding the government offensive. A Russian military spokesman said combat jets destroyed militant facilities near Aleppo, where explosives for suicide bombers were being made. Moscow says its airstrikes are meant to weaken Islamic State and other terrorists. But Western officials and Syrian rebels say most of the strikes have been focused on areas where the extremist group does not have a strong presence. In Damascus, an Iranian lawmaker met with Syria's parliamentary speaker in the build-up to the joint operation against the insurgents. Following the meeting, the head of Iran's foreign policy said this new coalition is serious and could be part of a new development in the region. Western nations have been calling for a negotiated political resolution to the civil war. Alan Buckney, TVB News.
Jerusalem marked another day of violence after 2 more of its citizens were stabbed by Palestinians. But Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas blames Israel for the bloodshed, saying its aggression is bound to spark a religious war. Gunshots rang out as authorities closed in on a Palestinian man who tried to stab police guarding the Old City in Jerusalem. The assailant, clad in military clothing, appears to be shot before an officer calls to cease firing. He died of his gunshot wounds. Then, right outside Jerusalem's central bus station, a Palestinian man stabbed and wounded this 70-year-old Israeli woman.
One 50-year-old woman was injured moderately to lightly as she was stabbed. The terrorist attempted to go on the bus. Police special patrol units that arrived at the scene shot and killed the terrorist.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas used a televised address to accuse Israel of sparking a religious war. He called Israeli authorities racist terrorists and flashed an image of a Palestinian boy shot by police. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Abbas of inciting his people to violence. As evidence, Israeli police released footage of the latest knife attacks. This one purports to show Palestinian teenagers chasing after a Jewish man they just stabbed. This one, a knife-wielding assailant charging police before being shot. In the West Bank city of Bethlehem, Israeli troops continue to clash with Palestinian protesters. The White House expressed deep concern.
And we continue to urge all sides to take affirmative steps to restore calm and prevent actions that would further escalate tensions in the region.
The unrest was first triggered by what Palestinians see as increased Jewish encroachment at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. That same religious spot is also revered by Jews as the site of 2 destroyed Jewish temples. To prevent the bloodshed from reaching Jewish neighborhoods, Israel has set up massive concrete roadblocks and deployed hundreds of troops across the country. In the past 2 weeks, 8 Israelis and 32 Palestinians have died in the violence.
Still to come tonight, postage rate changes to take effect on January 1st. A warning about potential health risks posed by raw pet food. And in Chechnya, government recommendations on what makes for a proper wedding.
Why does our brain tell us to eat food that's bad for us? Should we follow our